Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. And today, I want to talk about why we angrily post on social media. There's some new research that's being led by John McAleny of Bournemouth University. They had a great write-up in Study Finds, and it really got me thinking about this. But I've been talking about this for years. And my default preamble, if you're a longtime listener or follower, you know it. It's simply cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, but we're not immune from it. And quite frankly, we have seen the temperature rise and rise and rise, and social media has been a huge driver in that very specific issue. And so let's go through this, because posting content intended to antagonize people may not seem like a wise strategy for a social media influencer, but people who post content on social media can make money if their channels have a high level of engagement. And that's regardless of how positively people are responding to essentially the post or whatever they're putting out there. On top of this, social media platforms use algorithms that tailor the content we see to what we are most likely to engage with. And that's something that I've talked about quite a bit. If you're basically looking and engaging with angry screeds and, and rising temperature posts, it's going to keep feeding you more and more and more. But here's the thing. This also doesn't mean that the content it's feeding you is going to make you happy, right? The algorithm will learn from any engagement that you have with the content, including angry comments that you might post in response to an initial angry post. So there are things that you and I can do to help control our reactions to this kind of content. First, though, we need to understand why rage bait is so effective. And if you don't know what rage bait is, it simply means social media content that is designed to create a strong and negative reaction in you to get you to engage with it, whether you're telling the person you're an idiot or you're agreeing with it, whatever it is. So provocative comments can result in a higher number of clicks, shares, and comments, therefore potential money for the poster. Or if it's an intelligence scam for disinformation, basically confirming your bias, right? So this may result basically in a negativity bias, where negative emotions such as anger spread more quickly and more intensely through social media networks, and the algorithms continue to prioritize it. So in evolutionary terms, it's more important for us to pay attention to a situation that has caused us anger, basically to our group, than a situation that has created happiness. In other words, in our brains, our lizard brains, we are prioritizing that anger as a defensive mechanism. Anger suggests that action needs to be taken to resolve an issue, whereas happiness suggests everything is okay. You don't need to engage with happy things, but you do need to engage to right or wrong if you find something angering in some way, shape, or form. And although social media technologies are relatively new in terms of generational access, we've only had it for like the last 15, 20 years or so, the ways in which we understand and navigate our world are obviously not new at all. Humans are primed to look for social information, which includes anything that indicates a difference of opinion or possible threat within our social groups. I've talked about this before, about in-group and out-group mentality. You have one set of views in the in-group, and anybody on the out-group is a potential threat. Now, in the past, the groups we belong to were typically local, right? Basically where we lived, our friends, our neighbors, colleagues, all this kind of stuff. But the growth of social media means that we can now connect with people from all around the world. And that also means that there are far more groups that we can be part of. And in turn, basically routes through which angers can reach us, right? So the more groups we belong to that are hyperbolic or very focused in some way, the more outgroups we create, the more anger that we potentially have. Researchers found that people basically can be quick to align their views with others on anything that prompts a negative emotion, which provides another evolutionary benefit by providing safety in numbers from a potential threat. Remember, we're kind of pack animals too. Back in the days when we were hunting lions or whatever it was on the Serengeti, we hunted in numbers, right? We were together to protect ourselves. And in this case, the person posting the rage bait comment takes on the role of basically the pantomime villain who the audience basically ignites to rage against or boo at or whatever. The other core problem here is that we can post content or comments and immediately get a reply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is literally nonstop in this online world. This is also a huge issue when we were looking at cyberbullying, right? If we had a bully on the playground before social media, we could go home and home was a refuge. Now the bullies follow us home online, and we're online. This is a big problem. Now, previously, we used to have breaks from anything, like I just mentioned. We could break from anything or anyone that caused us a feeling of rage. This would give us an opportunity to calm down and reflect on what happened. But with the sheer ubiquity of social media, it can feel like we no longer have that escape. And so let's talk about coping in this anger-fueled ecosystem that we have here. Now, John McAleny, the one leading the research, thinks that an awareness of the motivation behind these posts is a good place to start. And what he thinks actually kind of makes sense, because there are, of course, people who post negative content who genuinely believe in what they are posting. But knowing that many of these posts are posted solely to drive engagement helps us reclaim our power over those interactions. And multiple people have been caught posting, whether it's, talking points from somebody else or something intentionally designed to anger you or demonstrably false information where you feel, oh my gosh, I have to correct this person. These things are done intentionally to basically get you to interact because, quite frankly, you're helping pay somebody annoy you. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. A 2020 study showed that giving people an understanding of manipulation strategies used in these media, basically used in social media, empowers that person that understands it to resist that technique. So think of the person posting the negative content as being an actor who is essentially just playing a character. Their actions are driven more by a desire for fame, whether that means infamy or actual fame, right? Rather than basically personal beliefs. And that's a huge, huge thing. Unlike traditional broadcast media such as TV, we do not need to basically be a passive audience in social media. So if I'm watching something and I'm yelling at the TV or whatever it is, and if you're a sports fan, you're probably yelling at your team if they're doing bad, but on social media, we can engage. The more that we avoid engaging any content that induces rage in us, the less it will be presented to us because the algorithms will basically start understanding that. I don't do a lot on social media. I post publicly. You're probably listening or watching this on a social media post. If you follow me, I post maybe a couple of times a day. But I also don't post rage bait. I'm here to try and educate. I'm not trying to raise the temperature, which kills my engagement. Lord knows I'm not making money like those guys are, on this. But the point is that we are all doing these things. We can influence and shape social media with basically what we choose to engage with or not engage with. And I don't see rage bait usually, with the exception of Twitter, because that's all it is, to be perfectly honest with you. But I see a lot of things. I see a lot of analysis. I see things. And of course, I see a little bit of it, but I tend not to engage with that. And you'll never see me posting trying to correct the record. That would be a very, very rare thing for me to do. And despite the speed and strength with which anger can spread through social media and through rage bait, there is emerging research which suggests that people can be nudged into reflecting on media content designed to provoke anger before they actually respond. This can dilute the influence of rage bait. And so my thought on this is, imagine basically a platform's AI identifying rage bait, and we already know they identify it incredibly well as they prioritize it and send it out. But imagine the AI or the platform also requiring something like a 1-minute reflection period before confirming an angry response. So I see something and it just, it burns my britches. And I need to respond because that jerk is getting it wrong or whatever. And imagine me typing a screed and blah, 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 blah. And it says, hey, you have 1 minute to reflect on what you just typed, and after 1 minute, if you really want to post it, you can post it or you can edit it, after that minute. That's going to give me just a minute to take a breath, to take a breather. Do I really want to be that angry back? Is it really worth my time? All these kinds of things. If we can get people into this mode, I think we can actually lower the temperature online simply by giving a pause. I mean, think about some of the firearm laws, depending on states. in the United States, like here in the state of Illinois, if you want to buy a handgun, for example, it's a 3-day waiting period, and that's known as a cool down period. In other words, if I am super angry at somebody, I can't just walk into my local, gun dealer and be like, I want to buy a gun. Give me a handgun now. Like, here's money, here's my identification, and then drive back over. I've got 3 days to kind of chill. And I think that's something that lowers the temperature. And I'm wondering if there's a study out there that has actually shown that cooling that temperature down has probably saved a couple of lives, or at least somebody from getting shot in the butt, right? So I think that would be a good thing longitudinally. But this is going to be a continuous and perpetual issue that we have, and we have to lower the temperature. We really do. Basically, there have been great studies on this politically. The hidden tribes of the U.S. really showed that it's only very small percentages on the far left and far right that have the megaphones and are angrily screaming at us from both sides on social media. And the rest of us are what they call the exhausted majority. We don't want it. And quite frankly, it's not good for us in general. And living in a perpetual state of being where you're just angry all the time isn't good for you in the long run. And it's not good for the people around you either. I mean, there were some pretty fraught Thanksgivings, I'm sure, this year, right, as a result of that. And again, I don't care what you believe. We just have to lower the temp. And I think this is really good research. And quite frankly, my only advice to you is think before you post. Take a moment, step back, and really contemplate, no matter how angry the post makes you, that the person probably is just trying to make money off of you by getting you to respond and engage. So don't. And I think it's really that simple when we really think about it. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please, 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 I don't want to say private, informed, and secure. Take care.